Hi everybody! So, Marvel's Black Panther is out. The first major superhero blockbuster in the MCU with the first mainstream black superhero. And everybody is losing their minds over it. And I actually did manage to get to see it very close to release date. And I can tell you right now, I'm basically here to join the choir. Because this movie is badass. So I'm sure most of you remember that Black Panther was introduced a couple years ago to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Captain America Civil War, where he, Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Chaka, lost his father in a bombing at the UN after his nation of Wakanda finally made itself known to the rest of the world, and spent the majority of the movie seeking revenge against the villain that killed his father, the former Black Panther. Now he has his own movie, and we get a lot more detail about Wakanda this time. To quickly let you know, Wakanda is a small African country in the setting of the Marvel Universe. It's not actually a real country, where a huge meteor containing a powerful metal called vibranium landed long ago. The Wakandans gathered around this metal and used it to develop technology that is far beyond anything the rest of the world has seen, just centuries ahead. But fearing what the rest of the world will do with this kind of metal and the kind of things it can produce, the Wakandans became a hidden nation that, when it finally did reveal itself, basically presented itself as a poor country of farmers and peasants and so on and so forth. Now in this movie, Prince T'Challa is about to become king of Wakanda, but he doesn't feel entirely ready for his royal duties, since he still very much misses his father and is not sure in which direction he should actually lead his country. Things then get complicated as Ulysses Claw, who stole a lot of vibranium from them many years ago, and who was also introduced in Civil War, starts to resurface, seemingly working for a man named Eric who has a lot of knowledge about the otherwise hidden Wakanda and seems to have a hell of an agenda against them. And that's basically all I'm gonna tell you. The plot isn't too complicated really, it's actually deliciously simple, but telling you much more than this would be a disservice to the movie. You really just gotta go see it. Now, right off the bat, Black Panther is absolutely gorgeous, especially every minute we spend in Wakanda, which, thankfully, is the majority of the movie. This is something that, say, the Thor movies haven't managed to do, not even in Ragnarok, which I otherwise really like. As pretty and interesting as Asgard is in those movies, we never spend a particularly long amount of time in them. We never get to feel them as a culture, at least I feel that way. And especially Thor Dark World was just dreadfully boring. I couldn't tell you one detail about Valhalla from that alone, other than the inclusion of the Warriors 3, which is something I really appreciated. But in Black Panther, we spent almost all our time in actual Wakanda and get to see the incredible amount of work everybody here has put into making this feel like a practically utopian and fantastic place. The combination of tons of African cultures and not just modern but downright futuristic aesthetics is just absolutely beautiful, and they've actually managed to make it believable. All over these futuristic buildings you can clearly see influences of commonly and obviously also not so commonly known African aesthetics, and God, it's just beautiful. I could take like a guided virtual reality tour of Wakanda and enjoy it immensely. It is just a sight to behold, it really is. Outside of the sheer beauty of the movie, almost every single character manages to be memorable, enjoyable, likable, and really kick-ass. From Black Panther himself to his very supporting cast within the Wakandan nation, to our villains, of which there are several, and all manage to have plot importance, which is something I have not seen a superhero manage to do so well before. Obviously some are more important than others, but they actually all manage to be their own unique personality, all have their own influence on the story being told, and all manage to feel like a threat. Again, some more than others, but they genuinely all make an impression, and that's really cool. So I very much appreciated that one. Other than the already known villains, there was one that I wasn't prepared for showing up, and it was a nice touch. I really enjoyed that. But it also goes for the rest of the Wakandan people. From the warriors that serve the Wakandan throne to T'Challa's own girlfriend and sister, who are both wonderful characters. It's just a joy. There was exactly one character I wasn't particularly fond of, but we'll get back to him a little later. Now, the main character that has made a big splash outside of T'Challa himself is Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who some of you might remember playing the Human Torch in that utterly disastrous Fantastic Four movie from a couple years back. Like, wow, that one was just embarrassing. But here Michael B. Jordan is bouncing back in incredible fashion when it comes to superhero movies. Eric Killmonger is intimidating, he's charming, he's sympathetic to a point, since he is very much a deeply disturbed villain. And he is just an absolute delight to watch, especially thanks to Michael B. Jordan's performance. He basically feels like a bit of an apology. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been facing a lot of criticism for its lack of interesting villains. And I do agree to a point, a lot of them have been very lackluster. But this is definitely a step in the right direction. This is just wonderful. And I'd like to add, I know I just gushed about it, but I'd like to add that Ulysses Klaue, played by Andy Serkis, is an absolute delight in this movie. He's no doubt a second banana, and that's almost a bit of a shame, but you never get a sense that he's a complete joke and that he wouldn't be a threat on his own if he actually set out to do some real damage. And he's just one of the funniest characters in the movie, and Andy Serkis is clearly having an absolute blast. He's such a markedly different personality type from so many other Marvel movie villains, and I enjoyed the hell out of every scene he was in. Now, as you can hear, I'm very hyped for this movie. I absolutely adored it. I agree with many of the good reviews it's getting, but do I think it's this completely flawless masterpiece that a lot of reviews will have you think it is? No, there are some aspects of it I could do without, and I will say they're nitpicks, but I'm going to bring them up all the same. Now, with a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, we obviously are going to get a lot of action, a lot of ass kicking, and it's definitely great, no doubt. That has become the standard for Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. They're almost always a delight to watch in the action scenes. But with that said, as fantastic as Black Panther is, and it is, we never really get to see Black Panther do much he didn't already do in Civil War, at least as far as I'm concerned. We've seen him flip from car to car. We've seen him bounce around and be quick when he fights. I never really got the sense that he showed us anything new or anything that makes him the Black Panther. At least in terms of ability, on-screen ability. In terms of character, there's plenty of it. Do not worry about that. But I could have used a bit more of its own identity when it came to action scenes. In particular, there's of course a final huge brawl. There always is in these movies. And it is a joy to watch, but it does drag on a little too long, and I still don't feel like we got to see T'Challa do his thing for real. That might just be me, possibly, but I do feel like it was lacking a little in that regard. Actually, one of my favorite action scenes were right in the start of the movie. You know, one of those establishing action scenes just to remind you that Black Panther can kick ass. And from there, it all did feel a little too much like every other Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. It was incredibly entertaining and enjoyable, but I would have loved to see something a little more specific to Black Panther himself. And now this next part is going to be a little hard to discuss without going into spoiler territory, but as much as I have praised Eric Killmonger's character, and he is a great character that makes a hell of an entrance and a hell of an impression, don't get me wrong, I do feel like he could have used one more scene detailing his background just a little bit more. That sounds insane when you're talking about a movie that is 2 hours and 15 minutes long, but as much as his background is decently unique for a Marvel Cinematic Universe villain, and his motivations, while definitely out of proportion, which is what makes a good villain, make perfect sense for it, I do feel like one more scene could have had the potential to sow just a little more sympathy into him. Because Eric Killmonger isn't named Killmonger for fun. He is a reprehensible character. He's charming, he's charismatic, but he is such a complete bastard and psychopath that it becomes kind of hard to truly sympathize with him. Truly sympathize with what he went through. What we get to see does allow you to sort of build upon it yourself and have a few assumptions of the kind of stuff he may have gone through later. It all works, it definitely functions, but I feel like just one more scene would have really cinched it and made him truly fantastic. Again, May just be me. And finally, on the really nitpicky side, for a movie that really wants to brag so badly about having Kendrick Lamar do the entire soundtrack, to the point where he released an entire Black Panther album, it certainly doesn't like using it very much. I have for once actually sat down and listened to this album, and while I can understand that an album that constantly goes from hard hip-hop to soft R&B might have songs that are a little hard to place in this movie, they really don't use a lot of it, and the one time they do, where it's super noticeable, it's strangely remixed in a fashion I understand, but it just doesn't really work for me. But that's a super nitpick. The music is still very, very good, and does everything it can to make this quite the experience. And finally, the final conflict did include a few things that I think we've seen a few times too many before in too many movies. I won't say what, but some characters do things that I would have preferred they didn't. We repeat some tropes that I think we've been using a little too much. And there is one character from the Wakandan side of things whose subplot I frankly don't really get. I may have been confused, I may have misheard something. I might have to rewatch the movie to get it fully, and I definitely will. But there is just one side of this conflict that doesn't make sense to me and could have been cut without having that much effect on anything. So yes, I definitely think Black Panther is a fantastic superhero movie and a very high tier Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Other than being a sequel to Civil War, it manages to stay wonderfully self-contained, and all the story details you need to know from Civil War, in case you haven't seen it, are very neatly covered very early on, so you're not really missing out on anything to understand the rest of the movie. Do I think Black Panther is perfect? No, I've given you a couple reasons why I don't think so. And do I think some of the extremely glowing reviews it has gotten have been colored by the current cultural landscape? I mean, without getting political, yes, definitely. But you're either lying to yourself or being extremely naive if you think that's anything new. All in all, Black Panther took a major stride in a field where it was very much needed, and it is very much appreciated. I can't wait to see what he gets up to in Infinity War. Thanks a bunch for listening to me rave about Black Panther for a while, you guys. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment in the description below about what you thought of the movie and where you hope they take the character in the future. And if you want to see more reviews, top 10 speed paints of movies, comic books, games, and other good nerdy stuff, subscribe to my channel and click the little bell to be notified when new stuff shows up. And check my description to see where you can find me on various social media. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time!